What's up, YouTube? Welcome to Monte Poker episode 10. Are we really on 10? We hit double digits. Well, thank you, everybody. Glad to have you here as per usual. This session was played out of Central Coast Casino here in Grover Beach, California. One of the only two spots we've played out thus far on the vlog. It's going to be a quick one. I was on my way home from work. Just wanted to play some cards. Sat down, played for 2-3 hours, and we got up. We got some pretty sick hands in that short amount of time. And we were also put into a really weird situation. All right, enough with the intro. Let's jump into it.
All right, so the first hand of the night, we start off with King, Queen offsuit under the gun +1 with $400 in our stack. And now that I'm actually looking at the video, I realize that graphic is actually incorrect. I think we are middle position +1. Anyhow, the action folds over to the button, who decides to grab a bunch of chips and says that $15 is not enough to see a flop, and she throws 45 out there. The small and big blind both fold. Under the gun folds. Under the gun +1 decides to put in the call, and then middle position also decides to put in the call. So at this point, I don't think we have a good enough hand to re-raise it, so I'm just gonna go ahead and make the call because we're getting great odds here. I think if either of our cards hit, we might be in pretty good shape here, considering nobody re-popped it beforehand and it was just a $15 raise, potentially ace queen and some ace king that we'd be up against, but we'll see what happens on the flop. The board comes out 4 of diamonds, 5 of hearts, king of clubs. The action checks over to us, and we are not going to slow play this because there's too many people involved. Don't want to let any weird hands get there. So I go ahead and lead out here for $85 into a pot that had 180-ish. The button grabs some chips pretty quickly here, puts them together, and then ends up putting them in the middle. At this point, I start debating what hands she could have that are beating us. Ace king is potentially here. I don't think she would have raised as small as she did with aces. Kings are unlikely, so she could have jacks, queens, ace king. So when this 2 of hearts comes on the turn, I decide to go all in because there's more hands combinations that we're beating than we're losing to. Our opponent doesn't snap us off, so that's good news. She ends up showing that she has pocket queens, and the entire table just kind of, makes a disgruntled noise. I let her know that I have a queen as well, and then she mucks her hand. I end up showing her that she was drawing to 1 out, and then she rabbits the deck and sees a 7 of hearts on the river. Very unlikely that she was gonna catch her 1-outer. So we end up scooping this one. Next relevant hand, we pick up pocket 6s in the cutoff with $582 in our stack here. I decided to raise to $13. I don't necessarily want to play a big pot. I kind of just want to set mine here, but we don't want to just limp either. Otherwise, we can't even beat the rake. So I throw $13 here. The big blind ends up calling the $13 bet. Small blind folded. Middle position players get out of the way, and then we get one more caller in the middle. So we're going off 3 ways to this flop here for $43, and the board runs out 10 of hearts, 6 of clubs, 4 of spades. We spike middle set on this board. There's not too many draws out here, so I don't want to bet too big. I go ahead and make a continuation bet for the same amount, $13, trying to keep some, random face cards in this pot here. Both players do end up putting in the call, so we go to the turn with 82 in the middle, and an interesting card hits the turn. The 10 of clubs comes out. This isn't necessarily a great card unless somebody already had top pair, which I assume they would have bet on the flop, but then the player in the middle leads out for 20 here. Hopefully he has trips. Maybe he picked up a flush draw. We already have a boat, so we kind of want whatever he is going for to get there. And the small blind also ends up putting in the call. Not really sure what she's doing in this hand. She keeps checking it over to us and then calling. 7 of clubs ends up hitting the river here. The small blind takes a look at her hand, takes a look at the board, takes a look at her hand again, and ends up tanking for a fair amount of time here. I'm not really sure what she's on. I don't know if she's trying to make a bluff or see if her hand somehow connected with this board. There's not really any obvious straights out there, and there is a flush out there and a paired board. Eventually she ends up making the fold, and the player in the middle checks it over to us pretty quickly. I don't think he has a crazy good hand, so I'm just gonna bet 40, hoping he has a hand strong enough to call. But before I even get the chips out there, he ends up mucking his cards. We end up showing the boat. Why I keep showing hands, I don't know. We have chips to stack, so let's not worry about it. Moving on to the next one, we got a couple hundred in our stack, but we didn't update the overlay because this hand's gonna be pretty quick. I raised with ace 10 of hearts in middle position +1. Our nemesis on the button ends up going all in for $55. We basically have half of it in there, and we have a strong suited ace, so I end up putting in the call here, trying to let her win some money back. At this point it's 6:51, so it's been about 30 minutes since we got here. The board runs out Jack 3-3 with 2 hearts, 8 of clubs on the turn, 6 of diamonds on the river. Our opponent ended up showing us pocket kings before the river card even came out. We had a good opportunity. We picked up some equity. I knew we were going to be behind going into that board, but it was worth a shot. Our next hand of interest brings us 2 black kings under the gun +1 with 644 in our stack. I decide to raise for $15 here after one player limps in. This has been a standard opening size on this table thus far. I would like to make it bigger, but because we're in such early position, I decided to just go for 15. And then luckily the player behind us decides to raise to 45, and one more player calls after him. Holy hell, we have a third player also putting in the call for $45, and now the action is on under the gun, who will hopefully, nope, he ends up folding. So at this point I'm going to raise. I need to raise pretty big. The player that originally raised is a pretty solid player, and I know he will call if he thinks all the players behind him will also call if I don't raise enough. So I'm really just heavily debating the amount here. Do I want to get more than one caller? Do I want to get everyone out of the hand? There's already 180 in the middle, so I'm just going to go really big here and try to just take what's already in there. So I go to 275 here, and at this point my man is pissed. he literally said, man, why did you guys all call? Now he gets to do this, and he knows exactly what I'm doing. I would easily make this move with ace king, maybe even ace queen suited, try to isolate or steal the pot. He ends up mucking his hand, but it doesn't actually cross the line, so the dealer has to ask what he's doing here. So he mucks his hand, gets it over the line. The player right after him decides to put in the call for a lot less, and then the middle position player ends up folding. So at this point, we're just gonna go heads up here. So the dealer grabs what she has covered, she pushes back my chips towards me, get a little bit of a refund here, built this pot up, and it's not entirely our money, so we're playing for 264. Our opponent shows queen of diamonds, 9 of diamonds. Bit of a questionable call, but I'll take the action. The board runs out 5 ace ace, 8 on the turn, 8 on the river. Our opponent does not have an ace or an 8, so no boat for her, and our kings are good. A couple of our opponents complained that they folded the ace here, but that was why we went really big. I'm extremely happy that we got re-raised when we opened up for 15 with kings under the gun. And we finally made it to our feature hand of the night here. We have a mystery hand with 776 in our stack and middle position +1. There is a $15 open here, and then the under the gun +1 player called. Player after him got out of the way. I ended up putting in the call with pocket 9s. The action gets back around to the button and she calls. Small blind ends up raising to $30 here. The player right after him folds, and then we have under the gun putting in the call for 30 as well. This is a pretty no-brainer for me. I'm also just going to put in the call here. I could potentially try to re-raise it or squeeze, but with this amount of people in the pot, I don't think I'm going to be able to isolate, and if I shove, I'm only going to be called by better, not anything worse, so there's really no point. And at this point, I'm wondering if the action's on me, and I look around and the player behind me still hasn't acted. He ends up pointing at his hand and didn't realize the action was on him. The second he realizes it's on him, he ends up shoving, and he doesn't have too much more here. It's not really enough to get me out of the hand. He's got about $54, but then I start looking around the table. Player on the button only has 55. The small blind has about 300-ish, and then the other player that called has about $80 or so left behind, maybe a little bit less. And before I can finish my thoughts or look at the rest of the players' stacks, the following happens.
It's on me. It's on me. Hold on.
Oh, you didn't know that?
Yeah, I'm thinking.
Okay. I'd like to find
Yeah, I've been thinking for like 15-20 seconds.
Come on.
It actually just got to me. It's fine.
Really?
Yeah.
You got
It's okay. It's okay.
He's a nice guy. Clock.
Action. The action was on me for like 15 seconds.
So that was a little bit weird. I haven't had anyone call the clock on me that quickly. I feel like it was bad etiquette, but I'm not 100% sure. Let me know what you think in the comments if you agree or disagree. Anyhow, after the villain who was antsy to get her money in ended up getting us out of the hand, the other player with a big stack ends up putting up the call. The other small stack player ends up just putting all his money in for a little over $70. So we ended up making a good fold. This is kind of what I was worried about happening. I didn't want to see a flop with pocket nines for this amount of money and then play heads up with the other player when I still also had to get through the other three players that were already all in. All in all, I think it was a good fold. Anyhow, let's finish out this board run out. I will fast forward through all of this stuff here. 274 in the middle. We ended up folding our pocket nines. The flop comes out 7-8 of clubs, 10 of hearts, king of hearts on the turn, queen of clubs on the river. Our opponents get to showdown and we see pocket kings for a set of kings, queen jack for a pair with a missed straight draw, ace queen with a pair with a missed straight draw, and then the last villain shows ace king for a rivered flush here, and he ends up scooping the entire pot. We would have flopped an open ender. Glad we got out.
I don't really know poker etiquette wise. I know the bet I was personally facing wasn't that big. I already had 15 in there and it went to 50 and some change, but I had to look at the action behind me and see how it was gonna go. Obviously pocket nines heads up. If I think I'm flipping, I don't mind repopping it to try and get the coin flip, but since everybody's stack sizes were so small, I didn't think I was gonna get anybody off their hand, so I just wanted to make sure. I didn't want to continue with that hand there, and I'm glad I did it. Even though it saved us money, I got really annoyed at the lady that called clock on me. Yeah, I get it wasn't that big of a decision, but I don't know, 30 seconds doesn't seem like a long ass time. Anyway, I was annoyed. Most of the money I had was from that woman that called time on me, so I just decided to get up with their money. Maybe I'm being immature, maybe I'm overreacting, but it just didn't feel right. I didn't feel like playing anymore after that. I feel like the best way to get back at her was to just get up with her money and not even give her the chance to get her money back. She obviously didn't want me in her pots. That's why we had the short session this time, but we ended up making a couple $100. Let's go check out the stats real quick. So we got Central Coast Casino on February 20th. We bought in for 400, cashed out 786 for $386. And the session, oh my God, it was only an hour and 20 minutes. It's insane. And here's what our graph's looking like. Took a bit of a dip, but we're starting to get it back. And that was the last session for March. Thank you all for stopping by. Appreciate it as always. If you made it this far into the video, please like, comment, or subscribe if you don't mind helping me out a little bit. And I will see you all next week.